So what that means is I look for imbalances throughout the body, look to understand the root cause for someone's symptoms, and run a bit of an investigation. I play detective to try and understand what's really going on with somebody. But fundamentally, my specialism is gut health and digestion. I really do believe that you get that right, and it really will mitigate disease taking hold and manifesting. And I'll go into that in a bit more detail. Just again, for those who want to understand a bit more about what functional integrative medicine is, a lot of standard care doctors and physicians are trained to treat the body in silos. They will study the brain, and they will study the immune system, they will study the heart, but very few go into depth to understand the interplay between those systems. Functional medicine, we do see there as being interdependence between those systems, that that there is a correlation, and the one that I'll be talking in depth about, well, won't be too in depth, but going back to my 30 minutes, is the link between gut-brain, the gut and the brain system, and the gut and the immune system. And science is really only at the start of uncovering that relationship. Oh, excuse me, I'm a novice with the clicker here. Right. So standard medical disclaimer. Just give you a chance to read that through. Right, so we've all heard, most of you are probably familiar with this quote. It's the Hippocrates quote that's over 2,000 years old, but as I say, science is really only now beginning to understand how true he was. And increasingly so as science studies gut function, they say the gut and the immune relationship, the gut and the brain relationship, they're understanding that once gut function is compromised, how that then can lead for diseases to take hold, and diseases that we would normally associate with gut health. We all know kind of the non-specific things such as bloating, gas, abdominal pain, those we associate with digestion. But now they are finding causative links with breakdown in say that whole gut function, linking it back to the start of diabetes, arthritis, all those inflammatory conditions, autoimmune conditions, cancers, depression. So yes, by understanding that gut function is the root of most of today's health problems, we can also understand that gut repair is therefore the mother of preventative medicine. So I'm very much about empowering people to take charge of their health. So by understanding what causes a breakdown in the digestive system and gut function, by understanding the cause, we can also then know what treatment that we need to follow. And my treatment always follows the 4 R's. They're the standard 4 R's of functional medicine, which is remove, replace, re-inoculate, and repair. But they will be individualized depending on the patient that I'm looking at. So scarily enough, this is the projected rise in the cases of chronic diseases. So they're projecting, you can see 62 rise in cancer, and already I think we've all been touched by someone that we know has got cancer, so it's quite scary if we already feel that we've got those touch points in our lives anyway, that they're going to go up 62%. So this is why anything we can do in terms of our day-to-day lifestyle and food choices to start impacting those projected figures, so it doesn't actually look like that when we get to 2023 would be awesome. Because trust me, I guess I'm going to speak out on this, but most people I'm sure feel it, that if we put our health in charge of other people, particularly the government, they're not really going to be looking after us. And when you look at the spend, I think it's in the trillions the government spend on healthcare, there's really nothing that goes towards prevention in terms of education, etc., etc. It's down to people like Andrew, I guess people like me in the healthcare space, when to get out and give you guys the information that you can take on board and make those decisions. The gut. So a lot of when we talk about the gut, we think of belly, but I'm going to talk about gut as the whole tube that literally goes from the mouth to the anus. And this is where I'm going to start to get a bit technical when I kind of walk you through the digestive process. So just to give, I guess I don't know, how many people do give thought to their digestion? We give thought to our food choices. We understand what hunger feels like. We know what feeling full feels like. We know what, most people know what healthy food choice is towards a non-healthy food choice. We know when we eat because, like I say, either we're hungry or it's comfort food or it's a craving. So those things we're all aware of. We make our food choice, we eat it, and then we go about our day. But how much thought do we actually give to what then goes on when we consume our food? Probably not much. So I guess what I'm here to do is take the lid off. I guess what happens when you go around and do the next task of the day, what the body then has to think about, and all the functions the body is then involved with relative to digestion. So the GI tract is this long tube, as said, runs from the mouth to the anus. Anyone want to estimate how long that is? Does anybody know? It's about 30 foot. It's about 9 meters long. And one quick interesting fact: the colon, otherwise known as the large intestine, in women it's about 4 to 5 inches longer. No one's quite sure why, it just is, and this is why invariably it's mostly women that will have problems in the lower digestive system, because that extra 4 inches means that even though it should look a nice, so this is what I'm talking about, upper colon, transverse colon, descending colon. The women's is about 4 or 5 inches longer. So rather it looking nice like that, which in men it tends to be because they've got this nice six-pack holding that in. In women, our pelvis is rounder and deeper, and our reproductive organs take up a lot more space. So what tends to happen is that can collapse down into it, causing that to become a lot more contorted. So in female patients, invariably, they're the patients I'll see that are more bloated, constipated for that reason. So it's a little fact for you there. So invariably, sometimes there can be nothing wrong, and a colonoscopy, people can have one done, and it's purely that their, like I say, their colon just become twisted. It's just more convoluted, especially if you're a smaller person like me. I've still got to fit all of that in. Right, so yeah, the role of digestion, it's not just a question of you are what you eat, it's what you digest and absorb. So I can see, again, people who come to me, they're making super healthy food choices. I get them to do a food diary, but they're like, but I can't understand, I'm still bloated, I still get abdominal pain, I've got gassy, I feel I've got bad breath, what's going on? So even those people that make healthy food choices, your ability that your body has to digest and absorb will affect everything beyond that, because yes, whatever's on your plate becomes you, but if your body is struggling for any reason to absorb those nutrients, then that can be the start of certain symptoms showing up. So that's sort of the main, if I had to describe what's the gut's main overall function, is the breakdown and assimilation of the necessary nutrients from food for the body to build, repair and operate itself, while making sure that nothing foreign gets into the bloodstream which could threaten its survival, which is one of the main reasons, so you may know this already, that 80% of the immune system, it resides in the gut. And I say when I refer to the gut, I mean that whole tract, that whole tube. If I kind of liken that, if we think about it, that tube is outside us. It pretty much, because it is this one long tube that runs from the mouth to anus, and it is outside us. And think of the immune system there is a bit like Homeland Security. It is monitoring what can and cannot go through, and then it's got a variety of arsenal it can deploy, whether it needs to shoot certain people or the bad guys or the pathogens from getting in. So it tends to, luckily, be quite strict as to what it allows through and what it doesn't, and I'll quickly touch on how it can decipher the goodies from the bad guys. But think of it like Homeland Security. My other analogy I use is, think of your body like the castle, and around the castle is the moat, and the moat is the GI tract, and you've got sentinels on guard stationed around the castle, making sure that only the good guys can cross and get across the moat and get into the castle. So think of the GI tract a bit like that. It is kind of outside you until that food is assimilated and digested, and I say, which is why that the body's got to be really careful in terms of what it lets get into the bloodstream, and why there's certain tools in place to decipher that. So yes, I think I've mentioned on this. Stress is one of the main reasons why, if I see somebody, their diet's super healthy, they tend to have digestive issues. Reason being is that stress, and again I'll use that another analogy, stress switches the body from the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest, to fight and flight. And you know, we're still, after all this time, we're still programmed as we were back in the days of Neanderthals chasing tigers, that when the body's under stress, it literally does think that it's going to die. And that stress can be anything. It can be stress from breakdown in a relationship. It can be stress because the kids are behaving badly. It can be stress from work. It can be stress from being stuck in the traffic jam. Whatever. It triggers emotions. It triggers cortisol that puts the body into survival mode. And the two functions that are not essential to the body's survival when under stress are reproduction and digestive health. I also specialize in fertility, and stress is one of the main reasons some of my clients struggle. So the minute, if you're in constant stress mode, the whole of your digestive system pretty much shuts down. The brain stops signaling to the nerve that connects the brain and the gut to trigger the reduction of hydrochloric acid, which breaks down protein in the stomach, and certain enzymes. So that whole thing shuts down, and when it shuts down, obviously that means that food doesn't get broken down as quickly. That leads to inflammation in the gut. Can then cause certain foods to ferment, which then, you know, the bad guys, they're very opportunistic. Those candida you may have heard of, the yeast bacteria, that will just latch on to that slow moving passage of food and will literally be feasting on it. And the fermentation process will be releasing certain sugars that they love to feed on. Also leads to constipation, etc. So stress, as well as food choices, I'll touch on other things, can be one of the things that start to cause poor digestive system, problems with the digestive system. Right, basic anatomy of digestion. Now most people probably are aware, or they think that digestion starts in the mouth, but it actually starts in the mind. Or you may know this, like you start thinking of your favorite food, what you're going to eat, and you can almost start to feel those taste buds going. Especially if I say to you all, imagine if you're now about to bite into a lemon. Yellow, juicy, rich lemon. Is that starting anyone's taste buds to tingle a bit? Yeah. So digestion actually starts in the mind. It creates the release of saliva, and it gets the stomach primed and ready to receive food. Mouth is where chemical digestion takes place. Obviously, we chew the food, and chewing the food also releases saliva. Saliva is mainly composed of amylase, which is an enzyme which breaks down carbohydrates. So carbohydrate digestion actually starts in the mouth. So we all know the importance of chewing our food well, and the reason for that is that it takes a lot of the weight and the stress and the energy away from that food breakdown to happen further down. So this is all about, one of the reasons I say digestion is so important is that it uses a huge amount of energy by the body. Yes, in consuming the food, it provides the body with energy, but it also uses up a lot of energy. So whatever we can do to preserve that energy will give us more energy from the food we eat. So hence, why we're told growing up. Well, I certainly was, one thing was chew with your mouth shut. Apparently I always used to look like a washing machine, but chew with your mouth shut and chew your food at least 20 times. It was good advice. It was good advice. It means it gets the saliva really working on the food, gets the body super primed, and it just takes the weight off that breakdown further down. Esophagus, that's the tube that runs from the mouth down to the stomach. It takes about 6 seconds when we swallow. That swallowing is voluntary. It's the last part of the voluntary process of digestion before the food hits the stomach. The stomach can hold up to about 2 litres of food on average, depending on the size, holds about 2 litres of food. And it very much works like a blender. It kind of squeezes that way and squeezes that way and sloshes everything around, making what's known as chyme. Protein digestion mostly happens in the stomach, and the substance that helps break down the food, the protein in the stomach, is something called hydrochloric acid. Most people often think when they get acid reflux, they're producing too much hydrochloric acid. But as I tend to see most acid reflux issues in older patients, and I know HCl, hydrochloric acid production, declines with age, invariably it isn't. So when I get people who've gone to see standard care physicians and been given protein pump inhibitors, I'm just like, that's not good news, because it overquells production of stomach acid. And the reason that stomach acid is there, it's that first line of defense. It's literally a bath of acid. So any nasty bacteria that literally fall in there are just going to get sizzled up before they can pass further, start causing problems, and maybe go into the bloodstream. So we really want that pH of that stomach acid environment. The stomach also can host a bacteria known as H. pylori. And again, if that HCl production isn't sufficient enough, H. pylori is an opportunistic bacteria. It will literally start burrowing into the walls of the stomach and causing stomach ulcers. So hydrochloric acid and acid reflux, invariably it's not actually because of too much hydrochloric acid. Invariably it's because of too less, or maybe there's a weakening in the sphincter muscle that links the bottom of the esophagus to the stomach. So I'm trying to be quick here. I've got about 10 minutes left. From the stomach, the chyme goes into the small intestine. Small intestine broken up to 3 parts. The duodenum, the duodenum, and the ileum. Most of the absorption actually happens in the upper part of the small intestine, and I'll touch on that in the next slide. Gallbladder, I've put it on here, it's more of an accessory organ. The gallbladder is where the bile produced by the liver gets stored until it's needed, and it gets secreted into the small intestine. It's the bile salts in the bile that help break down fat. So people who've had their gallbladder removed, they're still fine, they can still break down fats, but maybe they can't do it as well, or there's certain things I have to be wary of. But the gallbladder is really just the storage container for the bile, which contains the bile salts, and it very much acts like dishwasher detergent. It's like an emulsifier, because if it was just water, we all know you're never going to get that greasy pan clean. You need the dishwasher, the dish soap to start that emulsifying process. And that's what the bile will do. The pancreas, another associate organ, releases pancreatic enzymes. That's mainly more amylase to help with the carbohydrate digestion, some proteins for the protein digestion, lipase, various enzymes that all help to break down that food. And again, naturally as we age, that enzyme production will decline. So again, if I've got patients just with non-specific bloating issues, constipation, malabsorption, or undigested food particles in the stool, one of my first things, I will put them on a blend of digestive enzymes. Liver, and again, an associated organ. So from the small intestine, the food particles will get shunted down the the portal vein to the liver, and then the liver's pretty much like, think of it as a conveyor belt, and it's either going green light, go, as in no toxins, red light, no, we need to process this. I can do a whole other talk on liver for you, but that's as much as I'm going to be able to touch on today. Large intestine, colon, so that's that bit. I mentioned the upper colon, transverse colon, descending colon. So it literally does this. So wherever you're massaging your belly, or if you feel you've got gas, make sure you're always going in that direction, because that's the direction that the colon naturally sits. If you go in that direction, you're making things worse for yourself. But sometimes if you've got any stomach discomfort, just a gentle massage in the natural direction of the colon should help there. Right, so this is the close-up of the small intestine. So the small intestine is actually made up of a number of convoluted folds and crevices. So they literally kind of, imagine that all lining the gut wall. And these are called villi. And off these villi come these hair-like projections called microvilli. And the reason for all these folds and crevices too is to give the maximum surface area possible for the absorption of nutrients. Now, if one was to lay this completely flat, so that the surface of the small intestine completely flat, anyone want to hazard a guess of the surface area? Size of a tennis court. Yeah. So people who are celiac, what has happened is that the inflammation created from that gluten sensitivity prior to diagnosis has literally worn away this villi. So that's where invariably they'll have malabsorption issues, because the nutrients literally cannot get into the bloodstream. That microvilli has been worn away from inflammation. So this is why it is so key to avoid the things that will trigger inflammation in the gut. Because the minute you've got inflammation in the gut, that microvilli can be seriously affected, and it means you're not getting the nutrients that you require. The other thing that inflammation has a tendency to do, so like I say, it's literally kind of this bump, next bump, next bump, along the lines of the GI tract. Now these, they sit together in what's known as tight junctions. Now, depending, and there's a slide that will touch on other things, various things can occur that start to trigger this inflammation, and what this inflammation will do starts to mean that these tight junctions, rather like that, they start getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The skin literally gets worn away, and that's what's known as leaky gut. You may have heard of leaky gut, intestinal permeability. It could often be the trigger factor for autoimmune conditions. Invariably with proteins. So when the body breaks down proteins, it's breaking them down to single chain amino acids. Then amino acids form branches. And what the body's trying to do when it's breaking down any proteins is to get them down to a single brick of an amino acid, which the body naturally recognizes, or it's not, it knows it well enough not to react to it. But the minute those tight junctions widen and there's a gap, it means that an uncleaved protein molecule, i.e. it's got 2 or 3 bricks attached to it, can slip through the crevices. Now, it gets tagged because normally proteins that shouldn't get through, that are more than the 1 brick, are bacteria and parasites, etc., etc. It doesn't know that it's an undigested gluten molecule or a meat molecule or a dairy molecule that is just, through poor diet, stress, etc., etc., all this inflammation's occurred, hence it slipped through the net. And this is what starts to trigger autoimmune conditions. Right, the gut and the immune system. As I said, 80% of the immune system resides in the gut. Science is only understanding more and more what that actually means. Basically, there are this gut tract here. It's literally 1 cell thick of epithelial cells, and there's something called gut-associated lymphoid tissue. And in that tissue, basically resides every single thing that makes up our immune system: neutrophils, lymphocytes, white blood cells, etc., etc. So that's what it means. If you think of it as the immune system all the components at a cellular level. Most of it literally sits there. And one of the things that ties in with the immune system that forms part of our gut is our gut flora. Now, again, going back, I mentioned cells on a cell comparison. We are only 10% human. If we've got about, they don't know the number of the bacteria cells, but we've got bacteria all over us, on our eyes and our nostrils, fingers, but most of it is in our gut, making up our gut microbiome. And again, science is only understanding the symbiotic relationship that gut microbiome have, and if we sterilized our gut, what they do know for sure is that we would all be dead. Hence, you know, antibiotics, they have their place, but we've got to be really mindful of making sure that that gut microbiome remains healthy, balanced, in order. I wish every time someone's given an antibiotic, the doctor knew to give them a probiotic that came with it, but invariably they don't. So how gut flora supports digestive health? In a number of ways. So just to give you a few facts on that gut microbiome, it probably weighs around 3 pounds. They don't know as yet all the different number of species. They think it could be anything between 500 and 1,000 different types of bacteria. If I took a bacteria sample from each one of you, it would all be completely different. Your gut microbiome, individual by individual, looks completely different, because you've all had different lifestyles, you've all had different illnesses. Whether you were breastfed, that will affect it. Whether it was a vaginal birth, that will affect your gut microbiome. The vaccines you've had over the course of your lifetime, that will affect your gut microbiome. What you've eaten will affect your gut microbiome. Each one of us is different. Hence why it's really difficult to give a generalized protocol in terms of everybody needs to take, yes, I do say to most people you need to take a probiotic, but if I'm treating somebody with very specific health concerns, there's certain strains I need to go in with over another. And the only reason I would know that is by doing a stool sample on somebody and getting some idea of what their gut microbiome was made up of. You may have heard nowadays that some doctors, physicians are doing fecal transplants. So it's literally taking what is perceived as a healthy stool sample, in that it has a very diverse range of microflora, mostly the good guys, and they will literally transfer that into the gut of somebody who isn't quite as healthy, and they've seen astonishing results with that. They're literally looking at putting it in capsules, so putting it in capsules that you can actually consume as well, and it's been seen to work. It has been seen to work. Yes, so our gut flora. You know that there's soluble and insoluble fibre. The good guys, the good bacteria play a key role in helping digest the soluble fibre, but also the indigestible fibre. A lot of that they'll use as their food source. So you may have heard of prebiotics. Certain foods contain prebiotics. It's basically the fibre that the bacteria could they digest, and they live off it, and it creates energy. And it's actually the main energy source that fuels our gut lining. So again, it's a very symbiotic relationship. They're required for the synthesis of certain nutrients and vitamins. Certain strains in particular support the breakdown of the lactose, which is the sugar in dairy products, and as I said, provides an energy source for the cells which line the GI tract. Again, so gut flora, they're involved in the immune system. So they know that literally bacteria will put out feelers into the GI tract. They're not quite sure how this works, but they'll put out feelers, and they will literally communicate with the gut wall, saying, no, it's clear, no, I can detect a certain pathogen, there's a bacteria here you need to know about. And they're actually the first line of defense in terms of that communication will tell that GOLT, that where the immune system of the gut lies, what troops to send out, what part of the immune system needs to sort of go into action. They reckon about 40% of toxins that we ingest are actually neutralized in the gut by that bacteria. So keeping that gut microbiome healthy is key because it takes the pressure off the liver. Obviously we want to be really mindful that we don't overconsume toxin in the first place, but as long as the good bacteria is there, we can be sure that a certain level of those toxins are going to be neutralized straight off and eliminated from the gut without having to bother the liver, which gets invariably overworked anyway. And so it says there, absorb many carcinogenic substances. So carcinogenic, that refers to anything that they now know is linked to causing cancer. Keep the opportunity bacteria in check. And again, they reduce the pH near the wall of the intestines. Once the chyme, so the food that comes from the stomach into the small intestine is known as chyme, the enzymes created to break that down are more alkaline in nature, which is what's required, but what the bacteria do is still try and keep the pH near the walls quite acidic, so they get literally burns and fries the bad guys. So what can imbalance gut health? Some of these are pretty obvious. A nutrient-poor diet, so a diet that is kind of, I call it the white diet, high in sugar, high in starches, pretty empty in terms of nutrients. Food irritants and toxic food additives. I'm a great believer in organic. For those of you that are, maybe remain on the fence, or I completely understand budget can eliminate, could be a preventative for getting 100% organic, refer to the environmental working group. Some of you may have heard of them. They're a fantastic organization. Go on their website. They've just released their current, they call it, I've got a complete blank. What they call it. Basically, it's the Clean 15, the Dirty Dozen, the Clean 15. So the Clean 15 are those foods which they've tested that are non-organic. They know they're being sprayed in pesticides, but they've got minimal residues. So, if you're having to choose between one or the other, look at those. And then the Dirty Dozen are those fruits and vegetables that contain the highest pesticides. And then unfortunately, what they have found is, even though you may think, well, I can soak it in apple cider vinegar, or I can wash and get rid of those residues. They don't. I think strawberries are the worst. It goes all the way. Someone's into it. The pesticides go right into the strawberry, and I think they found pretty much every known pesticide was in one group of strawberries. So. Yeah, really, and even the organic ones, they say, grow your own strawberries, guys, I'm afraid, might be the way to go on that one. But for a quick check, Environmental Working Group, Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. Core food combining, so some people, rather than to get them to do a complete elimination diet, to work out what they're sensitive to, depending how compliant some of my clients are willing to be, we may just start with combining food a different way. So a lot of people suffer with poor indigestion because they are consuming a lot of complex carbohydrates with a protein. Again, I'm over, Andrew, I'm 5 minutes over already. So just quickly, fruit breaks down the quickest in the stomach, takes about 30 minutes, hence why I say to people, try and eat food by itself. Otherwise, if you put it on top of something that takes 3 to 4 hours to digest, that's when things start to ferment, and that's when the candida takes over, and you're literally producing kind of alcohol in the stomach. So fruit on an empty stomach, because it will just absorb really quickly, no problem. Protein takes about 4 hours. That's one of the reasons why you may hear have a protein. Make sure there's a bit of protein in your breakfast. It'll keep you fuller for longer because protein takes the slowest to break down. Carbohydrates are about sort of 3 hours. Fat is actually the longest at about about 4 or 5 hours. So food combining. I say to people, rather than have your standard kind of starchy pastas, rice, etc., say with a meat dish, try and instead have a salad. So it's protein with a salad, or a pasta with a salad, rather than putting a heavy protein with a heavy carb. It just takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. Insufficient chewing, I mentioned on that. Whatever you can do to lighten that kind of digestive load further down is a huge plus. Medication overuse, I touched on antibiotics, anti-inflammatories and acids and steroids, all known to cause problems with that gut microbiome. Anti-inflammatories especially have caused, yes, you're taking anti-inflammatory, but actually, as far as the lining of the GI tract is concerned, it can start that breakdown of that tissue and start to cause problems with those tight junctions. Infections in gut balances, toxic overload, heavy metals, pesticides, and mold toxins. Certain pathogens and certain bad bacteria, a bit like I said, prebiotics are the food for the good guys. Those things are all the food for the bad guys. So not only when you put those in, you're not doing yourself any favors, you're actually strengthening the imbalance between the good guys and the bad guys, because they're like, yummy! Yeah, so you're feeding those. Inadequate HDL production, digestive enzymes. HDL production is key, because if your stomach is not producing enough of that HDL, the protein isn't being broken down properly, again, which means you're at risk of undigested food particles sitting in the small intestine, particularly proteins, causing that inflammation and being that trigger factor in leaky gut. Liver and gallbladder insufficiency. So so if your gallbladder is struggling or your liver is struggling to produce bile, the gallbladder isn't functioning well in terms of releasing that bile, then you're going to have problems with fat digestion. People, any pain, I mean, it's a generalized symptom, but one thing on my questionnaire, any people that have ongoing pain in kind of their left shoulder blade, it's an odd one, Andrew probably knows more about this, can be indicative of an issue with the gallbladder. Anyone that feels nauseous when you eat fats, that can be indicative of that. Stools that float, that can be indicative that the fat isn't being broken down sufficiently. Food allergies, sensory intolerances, eating under stress, I've mentioned. So that's key. I say to people, never eat on the run, don't eat standing, don't eat whilst watching something awful on TV. It all creates this stress which, takes us out of that rest and digest into that fight and flight. And eating late at night isn't good. So I say to people, try and kind of leave 3 hours between that last meal and going to bed. Because again, you don't want indigested food particles sitting around while you're sleeping. Also, you're horizontal as opposed to vertical. So again, you're losing the benefit of gravity helping move that food through. And at night time, the body is very much into restore mode. The brain repairs itself at night. If you're trying to make it digest at the same time, you really are affecting that body's repair and healing process. So signs and symptoms of imbalance. A lot of these are non-specific. I mean, if you Google bloating, you could go anything from, yes, you've eaten too much kale, to, oh my goodness, you could have cancer. So a lot of these are non-specific. So when I do a patient intake form, it's very, very in-depth. I can look at physical things, I get them to be really, really thorough with me. To try and work out, okay, what is causing the bloating, what's causing the skin issues, what's causing the brain fog. So upper digestion, that would be things like belching, burping, etc., etc. Lower digestion, that's gas, abdominal pain. Skin. So in Chinese medicine, which is my training, all the organs of elimination are linked. So that's the skin, the lungs, and the gut. And according to Chinese medicine, you cannot have inflammation anywhere in the body without it first appearing in the gut. So chances are, if I see anyone with any acne, rosacea, eczema, psoriasis, folliculitis, invariably there will be some kind of link between what's going on in their gut and what they're eating, the level of inflammation, allergies, etc. Mood disorders, that's a big one. I haven't had a chance to touch on even that. The brain, the gut-brain axis, they're doing more and more studies there. So particularly on children with autism, ADHD, rather than giving them the standard kind of medication, a pill for the ill, looking at their gut microbiome. They have a very distinctive gut microbiome. It looks very, very different to what we describe as normal. And in taking certain foods out of their diet and putting them on a very, very high strength probiotic, they notice significant changes very, very quickly and fared better than the standard treatment of care, which can be the ADHD medications or the antidepressants, etc., etc. They do know that certain bacteria are involved in creating assisting with the formation of certain neurotransmitters. So every neurotransmitter that we can find in the brain, they know that's in the gut. You may already know that 95% of the serotonin in our whole body is actually manufactured in the gut, and that links back to the gut microbiome have a play into that as well. Brain fog, if someone comes to me with brain fog, again, that can be linked to imbalances of the gut microbiome, particularly linked to candida, yeast overgrowth, often linked to brain fog. Hormone imbalance, fatigue, joint pain, anyone with arthritis, again, any itis invariably I can link back to inflammation in the gut. This is just a nice little diagram that kind of touches on the leaky gut I mentioned. So these are the villi with the microvilli. These are the tight junctions, and these are all the things that can start to cause a widening there, allowing things that really shouldn't get through into the bloodstream. How do I assess the GI, the digestive tract? Well, there's obvious symptoms, the ones we all know of, people who come in complaining of bloating, gas, burping, etc. But also ones that you wouldn't necessarily associate with problems with the digestive system. If I see somebody with dry skin, who's got problems with hair loss, I say who's suffering from joint pain, I will get them to stick their tongue out for me. That can tell me a lot in terms of the coating on the tongue, ridges on the tongue. I can link all that back. Nails, gums, all can tell me a lot about what's going on in the digestive system. Lab stool testing tends to actually be a last resort. Invariably, my intake form is pretty thorough. And by the time they've sort of gone through all of this with them, it's more, if anything, I get a sense, I get a feel, I get indicators of what's going wrong. The lab stool testing really just tends to back it up. There are things that you can do at home. So transit time is really important. So good transit times, that's when you ingest the food, obviously to when you need to go to the toilet, should be around 18 hours. You should be having around 3 bowel movements a day, and it should coincide with each meal, in as much as the breakfast, a bowel movement, and that should almost correspond to just a bit shy of what you had for breakfast the day before. The body kind of knows it's got a meal coming and it needs to expel kind of what it's built up. So ideally 3 bowel movements a day. People that are going not even once a day, that's a red flag. People who are going more than 3 times a day and the quality of that stool, that's a red flag. easy way to test your transit time is charcoal tablets. Just go and buy a couple of, just get charcoal, it's about $7-8 from the chemist, a couple of charcoal tablets, will turn your stool black. Time when you've took the charcoal tablet and time when the stool comes out black, that's an easy indicator of your transit time. Stool observation will tell me a lot. If you're curious as to what your stools will say, refer to something known as the Bristol stool chart. There's about 6 categories of stools. The ideal is what's known as to be quite graphic, I guess. The clean stool, the one where you really don't need to use much toilet paper. It looks like melted chocolate. It's a nice thick sausage shape. It's not too bumpy. That is the ideal. And there's various, there can be various reasons. Clay-coloured stools invariably a sign that you're not producing enough bile, because it's bile and old red blood cells that impact the colour. So clay-coloured stools can be indicative of gallbladder not functioning as it should be. So anyway, refer to the Bristol stool chart if you're curious. But those 2 things, more than anything straight off, will tell me if someone's got a problem with digestion. Transit time and stool observation. And and that's how I would look to treat. So I would ask somebody to literally do a food diary for me. I would assess their lifestyle, covering stresses in their life, toxic exposure, medication use, supplement use, would be removing the bad guys, upping the good guys, replace, that's upping sort of certain nutrients, certain supplements. A lot of people I'll put straight on digestive enzymes, and I'll put a lot of people on hydrochloric acid supplementation, just to help with that breakdown of the protein. Re-inoculate, that's connected with the gut microbiome, putting in good bacteria, repopulating that. And then repair is things like, I've got a very specific gut repair protocol for people who've got leaky gut. Most of us have, to some extent, got some degree of leaky gut. So that's sort of the number one place I tend to go. If someone who's showing with arthritis, autoimmune conditions, brain mood disorders, I kind of treat as if. You can do tests. It's a urine test, and they'll take a measure. It's a 24-hour urine test. It's a pretty easy one to do, but I tend to treat as if. But I'm sorry guys, I did go 20 minutes over into your it's such a big topic. So
Whenever you saw me, I lost my voice, so I'm going to go for it anyway. I met Lisa about 3 months ago, and as soon as I met her, I knew that we spoke the same language. And I said, you're going to come do a class for us so that my tribe can become your tribe. So for those of you who need to leave, please feel free to sneak out. Lisa, you want to stick around for some questions?
I can do that.
Before everyone leaves, tell the tribe how they can reach you.
Yeah.
If they have specific questions or they want to learn about your protocol.
Yeah.
I know that there's probably some people that are like, holy cow, she's great.
Yeah.
I want to get to know her.
Okay. So, I'll be really quick. So I specialise in fertility before I came over to Bend a year or so ago. And I wasn't able to work when I initially came out. I didn't have the right... I literally didn't have my green card, employment authorization. So I started connecting into the community, did a number of health talks, and I thought, well, what can I do that's a generalist subject? Well, digestion, because that's where I was going straight away with my fertility clients, certainly those who had autoimmune conditions, was looking at their nutrient intake, stress, and digestion. So I started doing health talks on digestion, and people seem to really, really enjoy it. It resonated with them. That led to me to do, I've done a number of now 4-week gut digestion detox programs in Bend, and I am now setting myself up as the gut guardian. That's going to be my new I'm going to be the gut guardian. So I was pure fertility. I'm now pure well-being. I'm just in the process of building my new website, and like I say, my new gut program is going to be called the Gut Guardian. Yeah, I've got a series of free health talks I'm going to be starting in Brave. That's a closed store just off Southwest Century Drive. I've got 5 weeks of, it's going to be on a Thursday night for a couple of hours, and even covering a whole range of topics there, not just digestion. But digestion's now kind of my baby, because I really do feel we get that right, you get digestion right, it really is the cornerstone for preventing so many other health issues. Or if you are struggling with health issues, trace it back to the gut, and we can start working on that. Yeah, so that's a bit about me. Any questions?